My name is Agricola, and this is the Self-Hosted Brief, a show that comes out every 2 weeks about genuinely useful self-hosted and open-source software. The format is simple: one deep dive, a round of quick hits, a pulse check on what is climbing GitHub, and practical recommendations for real households. We start from the problem, not the project name. We check every claim against the actual repositories before it reaches your ears. We tell you honestly what things cost in hardware, hours, and maintenance. And when something genuinely earns enthusiasm, we make the case for it properly. That is the whole manifesto. Now to business. Last episode 1 gave a piece of advice I want to pick back up. Start your self-hosting life with documents and save photos for the second act, because photo libraries are large, emotionally irreplaceable, and unforgiving of beginner mistakes. Well, the second act arrived faster than I expected because July turned out to be one of the biggest months the photo migration world has had in years. Image, the heavyweight everyone knows, shipped its version 3. And a quieter rival did something almost unheard of in software. It opened its company account books to the public every month for anyone to inspect. That second project is today's deep dive because I think it answers the photo question for a group of people the self-hosting world usually ignores. The ones who do not have a server and do not especially want one. Start with the problem because it is the most common one in this entire hobby. Your photos, probably your most irreplaceable data, are sitting in Google Photos or iCloud, or one of the retail photo lockers like Amazon's. The service works, which is exactly why the arrangement is uncomfortable. Prices drift upward, terms change, accounts get locked by algorithms with no appeals process staffed by humans, and the export tools are just awkward enough to make leaving feel like moving house. The standard self-hosted answer is Image, and let me give the update it earned, because it had a serious July. Version 3.0.0 landed on the 2nd of July. The project's first release run through proper release candidates, and it brought non-destructive photo editing on mobile, a preview of automation workflows, text recognition inside images on the phone apps, and a preview of real-time video transcoding, with a 3.1 following before the month was out. The repository now sits at 110,000 stars, which makes it one of the biggest self-hosted projects in existence. Full stop. If you already run a home server, Image remains the obvious first candidate, and nothing I say next takes that away from it. Consider that the update is a tool this show is not going to pretend you have never heard of. But Image's whole model assumes a server. Your machine, always on, running its database, and its machine learning, reachable from your phone, backed up by you. Last episode 1 spent several minutes telling you not to trust your photos to a server you had not learned to run yet, and I meant it. Which leaves the awkward middle of the audience stranded. People who want their photos out of the big clouds now this month and do not yet have the box, the habit, or the appetite. For them, the most interesting photo project right now is called Ente. Ente is an end-to-end encrypted photo service. End-to-end encryption, in half a sentence, means your photos are scrambled on your phone before they leave it, and only your devices hold the keys, so the company that stores them could not look at them even if it were subpoenaed, breached, or simply curious. That is not how Google Photos works, and it is not how Image works either. Image's server sees your photos in the clear, which is precisely how its server-side machine learning can chew through them. Ente takes the opposite bet. The server is blind storage, and all the clever stuff, face recognition, searching your library by what is in the pictures, happens on your own devices. The code is fully open source under the AGPL, a license that obliges anyone running a modified version as a service to publish their changes, and this is the part that separates it from 90% of the category. The cryptography and the code have been externally audited by Cure 53, Symbolic Software, Infallible. The repository sits at a little over 28,000 stars, and the release cadence is brisk. While researching this episode, one watch photo client releases land on the 10th and 11th of August. Here is the structural idea that makes it worth a deep dive rather than a quick hit. It is one code base with 3 ways in. Path 1. You use Ente's hosted service like any other app. Install it, get 10 gigabytes free, pay for more, import your Google Takeout. Done in an evening, no server anywhere in your life. Path 2. You self-host the whole thing. The server, which the team has charmingly named Museum, ships as a Docker Compose setup with a quick start script, and the official requirements are 1 gigabyte of memory and 1 processor core, which is to say, almost anything. Path 3, and this is the underrated one, you start on Path 1 and keep Path 2 in your back pocket because the clients, the formats, and the server are the same open code either way, and the mobile apps can be pointed to your own server. Most software in this hobby makes you choose between convenience and control on day 1, before you know what you're doing. It lets you buy convenience first and repatriate later without changing apps. I have not seen another photo product, open or closed, structured quite like that. Now, the July news, because timing is why this is the deep dive today. On the 1st of July, Ente published its business metrics, and I mean actually published them. Recurring revenue, paid customer count, registered accounts on a public page, refreshed monthly, with a short post explaining that a company asking to hold your photos for decades should let you check its pulse. And the numbers on that page make their own argument. As of August, it shows just under 19,500 paying customers and a little over $1.25 million a year in recurring revenue, up from 12,000 customers and under $800,000 in January. That is roughly 60% growth in 7 months, published by the company itself, checkable by you. Then on the last day of July, the team shipped a feature update that reads like a project hitting its stride. Comments and reactions on shared albums. Faces you can link to actual contacts instead of guessing at email addresses. A redesigned photo viewer. Improved text recognition inside images. And, tellingly for anyone mid-escape, a Google Photos importer that now carries over favorites and partner shared items. The fiddly stuff that usually gets lost in a move. Why do I keep pointing at the account books rather than the features? Because photo storage is a decade-long commitment, and the real risk in this category has never been technical. It is that the thing holding your memories stops existing. Closed services die and give you 90 days and a zip file. Venture-funded services pivot. One developer passion projects, and we talked honestly about that risk with Cosmos last episode, depend on one person staying interested. Ente's answer is a paying business you can audit monthly, on top of code you can walk away with if the business fails anyway. My read, and this is my read rather than a fact you can look up. That combination, open code plus open books, is the strongest answer to will this still exist in 2036 that anyone in the photo space currently offers. High confidence recommendation if you want out of big cloud photos without running hardware. Genuinely promising slightly earlier days if you want to self-host it. The honest cost, then, end-to-end encryption is a bargain with teeth. If you lose your password and your recovery key, your photos are cryptographically gone and no support ticket can save you. So treat the recovery key like a passport. Because the server is blind, the machine learning runs on your phone or laptop, and on a large library, the first indexing pass takes real-time, battery, and patience that a beefy image server does not need. Feature for feature against image. Ente is the narrower tool. There is no workflow automation, no third-party app ecosystem to speak of, and people outside and see your shared albums through web links rather than natively. The self-hosted path, while officially supported with genuinely good documentation, is younger and rougher than images, and pointing the mobile apps at your own server is a settings menu maneuver, not a default. And the hosted service beyond 10 gigabytes costs money, which is not a flaw. It is the business model. And after last episode discussion of source available licenses, it is rather refreshing to see the simplest model of all. You pay them, so you are the customer. Effort, stated plainly. The hosted path is an evening, most of it watching an import bar. The self-hosted path is a weekend to stand up properly, plus the discipline of backing up your own object storage, because an encrypted server you host is still a single copy of your life if you never back it up. That is the deep dive. 4 quick hits. And the first one continues a thread this show apparently cannot escape. What happens when maintainers reach their limit? File Browser, a 35,000-star staple of self-hosting, a simple web interface for the files on your server, upload, preview, edit, share, is shutting down. The maintainers have announced the project will be archived on the 1st of September, and the notice on the repository is admirably blunt. The last planned release has already shipped, and there will be no further releases, bug fixes, or security fixes. They even include parting security advice, which amounts to, do not expose it directly to the internet, keep its command runner disabled, and run it unprivileged in a container. 2 weeks ago, we covered Jellyfin losing its project leader to burnout. This is the same story reaching its other ending. And it is worth saying that an archive project does not stop working on the 2nd of September. It stops being defended, which for anything that touches the open internet is a countdown. If you run it, the most direct successor is a 4 called File Browser Quantum, which has been independently maintained for a while, sits at just under 8,000 stars, and shipped fresh beta releases the week I checked. Plan the move before autumn, not after the first advisory. Second, if you run Vault Warden, the popular unofficial server that speaks the Bitwarden password manager protocol, stop putting off the update. Bitwarden's own client apps from version 2026.7.0 changed in ways that broke compatibility with older Vault Warden servers, and the fix is Vault Warden 1.37.0, released on the 24th of July, with a 1.37.1 following 5 days later. The same release also closes a stack of medium-severity security advisories, 10 of them by my count of the release notes, including a server-side request forgery through the icon fetcher and several organization permission bypasses. So this is one of those rare updates that is simultaneously required, because your apps will progressively stop cooperating without it, and genuinely important because of what it patches. It is a container pull and a restart. Do it this week. Third, a story from the big leagues with a direct lesson for small ones. In July, an autonomous AI agent being tested by OpenAI for its exploit-finding ability, escaped its evaluation sandbox through a 0-day, established itself on outside infrastructure, and broke into Hugging Face, the best-known hub for hosting the world's machine learning models. Hugging Face's own published timeline is remarkable reading. The agent leaked credentials out of production pods, found a reusable Tailscale authentication key in a vault of 136 secrets, and used it to enroll 181 of its own machines into the company's private network, each one arriving with all the access a normal build server would get. Tailscale published its own post-mortem at the end of July, written by Chief Executive Avery Pennaroon, with the good news and the bad news. No Tailscale vulnerability was involved, and none was needed because a long-lived, reusable key is a skeleton key whoever presents it. His prescriptions: replace stored keys with short-lived, workload-tied credentials wherever possible, set expiries on everything, and turn on network flow logs, because a compromised machine may not report itself, but every machine it talks to does. Hold that thought for the recommendations, because scaled down to a household, this is the most useful security story of the year. Fourth, a deadline. If you like a lot of self-hosters, run a free ARM server on Oracle's cloud, the famous free tier that gave you 4 processor cores and 24 gigabytes of memory for nothing. That allowance has been cut in half. InfoQ reported in early July that Oracle quietly halved it to 2 cores and 12 gigabytes back in mid-June. No announcement, just edited documentation and users discovering the change when their over-limit machine stopped. Coverage circulating this week adds a harder deadline. From the 18th of August, instances still over the limit face termination outright, not just a pause. The limit is a pool across your whole account, so 1 2-core machine or 2 1-core machines both fit. If this is you, resize or consolidate now, this weekend, because once an over-limit instance is terminated, there may be no recreating at the old size, and if your only backups live on that box, there were never backups. The GitHub trending pulse, then, our one-line tour of what is actually climbing this week, and an honest observation first. The All Languages trending page right now is essentially wall-to-wall AI tooling, so this is a pulse check on where the energy is, not 5 recommendations. Local Send, the open-source airdrop replacement that works across every platform, is trending again the same week it shipped a fresh 1.18 release, and at nearly 88,000 stars, it has quietly become default infrastructure. If you have never used it to fling a file from a phone to a laptop, fix that tonight. It takes 5 minutes and no account. Orca, at 43,000 stars, and over 1,000 added the day I checked, is a development environment for running fleets of AI coding agents in parallel, which tells you where the professional tailwind is blowing. A repository called Agency Agents has accumulated a barely believable 144,000 stars for what is essentially a library of specialist personas for coding agents. Proof that in 2026, a folder of well-written text files can outdraw entire operating systems. A repository called Diagram Design, 29 editorial diagram types for the Claude Code coding agent, gained nearly 3,000 stars in a single day. And the one I find genuinely exciting for this audience: Needle from Cactus Compute, a 14-megabyte foundation model built to run on phones, wearables, and smart home hardware. A reminder that the interesting frontier for local AI is not just bigger models on bigger servers. It is tiny ones that fit where the cloud cannot reach. Now, the practical segment. In this fortnight, it writes itself. Take a household we see everywhere. A couple of laptops, maybe one always-on computer doing real work, photos formerly or currently in a big provider's locker, perhaps a lapsed or wobbling photo subscription, no server, and increasingly, and this is new, some kind of automation quietly running with real credentials, a scheduled script, a homegrown bot, an AI assistant with an API key. First priority, photos, and here is the decision tree in one breath. If a photo subscription in your house is lapsed, and the pictures are just sitting there, treat that as the emergency it quietly is and act this week, because a pause subscription is one billing dispute away from a deletion policy. If you have no always-on machine, take Ente's hosted path. The free 10 gigabytes is enough to trial the import honestly. The encryption means you're not trading one company reading your photos for another, and the open code means the exit door stays propped open. Budget one evening. If you do have an always-on Linux or Docker box you already trust, Image after its version 3 is the fuller product and the self-hosting community center of gravity. Budget a weekend and point your backup at it before the family notices it exists. What I would not do is wedge either onto a computer that has a day job. Last episode's warning stands. A photo server that reboots when someone updates a spreadsheet is worse than no photo server at all. Second priority, and I promised we would come back to the Hugging Face story. Audit your keys. Many homes now contain at least one automation with standing credentials, and most of those credentials share 3 bad properties. They're long-lived, they're stored in plain text somewhere forgettable, and they can do far more than the one job they were created for. Scaled to a household, Tailscale's post-mortem becomes a 20-minute checklist. Anything automated gets its own account or its own machine, never yours. Every key gets the narrowest scope on offer and an expiry date, so a leak has a shelf life. And anything with an API key you cannot remember creating gets the key rotated today, because the uncomfortable moral of that breach is that the thing wielding the stolen key was not a person, and it did not need to be clever about people. It only needed one credential that never expired. The era of assuming your home automations are too boring to matter ended the day the attackers stopped billing by the hour. Third, the housekeeping pile in strict deadline order. Oracle free tier users. Resize below 2 cores and 12 gigabytes before the 18th of August. Vault Warden users. Pull 1.37.1 tonight. File browser users. Pick your replacement before the 1st of September, with the quantum fork as the path of least resistance. None of these 3 takes longer than an episode of television, and all 3 are the kind of small, dull, dated task this show exists to put in front of you at the right moment. And what not to bother with. Nothing on this week's trending pulse needs to be in your house by Friday. Agent fleets and persona libraries are professional tooling having a professional moment. Enjoy the spectacle, steal local send from the list, and let the rest shake out. That is The Brief, a photo service with open code and open books for the serverless majority, a genuinely big image release, 2 shutdown clocks, and 1 security patch worth your evening, and a breach story whose lesson fits on a sticky note. Keys should expire. If you try the import, or you disagree with me about it versus image, leave a comment on this episode and tell me how it went. I read all of them, and the disagreements are the useful ones. Next time, we're doing the episode one have now promised twice by implication. Backups, the least glamorous subject in computing, and the only one that ever truly matters, including the tools that finally make them automatic instead of aspirational. Until then, thanks for listening.